to decide they're going to staff their cyber
Hold
squad.
on one second. Hold on, Preet. We're looking at live pictures now from the Department of Justice. There's the now soon-to-be former Attorney General. He's leaving. He's leaving the Department of Justice, saying goodbye to some of his associates there. Laura Jarrett, our Justice Department reporter, is watching all of this unfold. Laura, this is a moment that Jeff Sessions probably anticipated, but not necessarily today.
It's a pretty incredible scene out here in the Justice Department courtyard. Well, I would say really dozens of officials, both career.
By the way, Laura, I'm going to interrupt for a second. That was Whitaker saying goodbye. Whitaker, his chief of staff, now going to be the acting Attorney General. You see the round of applause that Jeff Sessions is getting from officials over there at the Department of Justice. Last time he's there, getting into his vehicle, saying goodbye, and then moving on. A brief little farewell for the Attorney General of the United States. Laura, go ahead and tell us what else you know.
He is joined here, but you can also see the Solicitor General, Neil Francisco, as well as his former Chief of Staff, Joey Hunt, and of course, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. And it's really quite a scene here, Wolf. Officials, I mean, I would say there are at least 100 people here. And when Attorneys General depart, it is typical for the officials to get what's called a clap out. Usually it would happen outside the office, but of course this is an extraordinary circumstance, and the situation is anything but typical in this instance. But clearly everyone wanting to see him off in style, wanting to say their goodbyes and show really a level of support that is unusual here, in a place that is filled with lawyers and not typically a scene where you see clapping like this.
Yeah. All right, let me get back to Preet. Laura, stand by. Preet, what do you think of that, little farewell for the Attorney General?
A little bit of deja vu all over again. I was fired at a certain point a couple of years ago and had the experience of walking out of my building, 1 St. Andrews Plaza, in front of all the people who I had served with and who I respect so much and whose mission is incredibly important to the country. And I've been critical of Jeff Sessions, as a lot of people have been, with respect to some of his policies and how he's undone some, I think, civil rights initiatives in the department. But I never have doubted that Jeff Sessions loves the department, loves the lawyers who work there, and was very honored to be in that position and humbled by being in that position. So, after several weeks and months, in fact, of being humiliated by the president who appointed him and being taunted by the president who appointed him, I think it's fitting that he got a graceful exit, such as it was.
Yeah, it was graceful. Evan, you got some more information too.
Well, for me, that was a staged event. Obviously, there was an attempt by people around the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Noel Francisco, the Solicitor General, all the other people trying to give the Attorney General a graceful farewell. But it was a staged event to sort of show like some kind of like show force, to sort of show solidarity with him. But let me tell you, I mean, there was a lot of weirdness to those pictures. This is, by the way, this is the way you traditionally say goodbye to attorneys general. I was there when Eric Holder walked out of the building. There were tears. People were clapping, just exactly like this. Obviously, the circumstances today are so different because, Eric Holder wasn't fired as this Attorney General was today.
Preet, I'm anxious to get your thoughts on the treatment of Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. How much of a slap in the face is it for the Deputy Attorney General, the number 2 person at the Department of Justice, to be bypassed by the president naming naming Sessions Chief of Staff to now become the acting Attorney General instead of Rosenstein?
I don't know if it's any more of a slap in the face than the embarrassing things that the president has been saying about him from time to time. We had that moment a few weeks ago when it appeared that he had been summoned to the White House and he was going to be fired, and that didn't happen. And there were these periodic statements that they were going to get together and discuss Rod Rosenstein's fate, keeping him dangling to make sure that he knew his place. So I guess it's a bit of an insult, but I don't think that Rod Rosenstein didn't expect this kind of a thing to happen or that this was a possibility. I do think more important than Rod Rosenstein's pride is whether or not we're now seeing an undoing of the special counsel's work.
Well, now that he's not going to have anything to do with the special counsel's Russia probe, Rosenstein, Whitaker is now going to oversee it, presumably, unless for some reason he decides to recuse himself, which is probably doubtful, I suspect, at this point. Wouldn't Rosenstein just take the hint and resign?
I'm only laughing just because I'm tired. Everyone's been up all night. But also, there's not a lot of people taking the hint these days. And Jeff Sessions, that was a nice walkout, but you would have thought he would have taken the hint months ago. And Rod Rosenstein would have taken the hint months ago. And other people who work in the White House might have taken the hint months ago. So, maybe Rod Rosenstein will stay, maybe he will go. It would still be my hope that even though there's a new acting attorney general who will be the most senior person overseeing the Mueller investigation, that does not necessarily mean that Rod Rosenstein gets cast to the side. He's still a person who has deep knowledge of what's going on there. He's the one who appointed Bob Mueller in the first place. And I'm not aware of any regulation that requires Rod Rosenstein not to be involved. And I think it would be silly, and it would also be a bad look optically if the new acting attorney general decided to freeze out Rod Rosenstein, because he can still offer advice and guidance and counsel, and he should.
He's a former U.S. attorney in Baltimore, Rod Rosenstein. Caitlin, I'm anxious. What do you think of that little goodbye that the Attorney General, now the former Attorney General, Jeff Sessions had? It was all staged, as Evan correctly points out. They wanted to show that. But some are already suggesting maybe, it was a little bit of a slap at the president for firing him.
Well, of course, and we've seen Jeff Sessions take those actions over the past year when President Trump has criticized him. He went to dinner that one time really publicly with Rod Rosenstein at a very popular Washington restaurant, and a photo of them dining with the Solicitor General quickly surfaced. And that was actually a photo that incensed President Trump after it surfaced online. So that's what likely this was. It's, look at me, I'm walking out, and you can see the faces on those Justice Department employees as Jeff Sessions is leaving. They're not pleased. They're clapping, they're thanking him, but no one looks pleased to be there, to be watching Jeff Sessions marched out like this. And a lot of people in the White House also feel similar to that. They do not think Jeff Sessions deserves the treatment that he's gotten from President Trump. They think it's unfair, but a lot of people don't stick up for Jeff Sessions because they see it as just this futile attempt to do anything like that. And we've seen Jeff Sessions lose his defenders inside the West Wing. He used to have Reince Priebus, Steve Bannon, who all stood up for him when President Trump first started criticizing him, telling the president to lay off of it. And also he would have a weekly lunch with the White House counsel, Don McGahn, who is now gone as well. So there aren't a lot of people in the West Wing, except for Stephen Miller, who did work for Jeff Sessions and is largely a big reason why he works for Donald Trump now, is still in the West Wing, still obviously very close to President Trump. So you wonder what those people are saying.
He worked for him when he was a senator, Jeff Sessions, and Stephen Miller was a speechwriter at the time. He was working for him when he was the Republican senator from Alabama. And, Laura, it's interesting because not only are, a lot of people in the White House sad because they liked Sessions, but a lot of Republican senators worked closely with Jeff Sessions. He was a Republican senator from Alabama for a long time. They all had a very good relationship. And many of them are privately saying, why did the President of the United States treat this guy as badly as he did, especially since Sessions was the first Republican senator to endorse him when he was a candidate for the Republican nomination?
It's virtually unheard of to have a former U.S. senator and up to today, a U.S. Attorney General being a whipping boy of the President of the United States. That's what he's been treated as. And I was a former career prosecutor for DOJ. As you enter the building and as you leave, as the Attorney General, you have people lining the hallways to support. I served under both Bush and Obama. And to see somebody like Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, have an unceremonious departure is just confounding to most people. I don't agree with his policies and the rollback of many of the civil rights agenda and the LGBTQ issues and consent decrees. However, you should give respect to the Attorney General. And what you saw there was the people who were actually in the line of secession, including Rod Rosenstein and the Solicitor General there, and also, of course, his now successor, who is not in the line, standing there. And I think that you had Jeff Sessions trying to be as gracious as he could to shake his hand. I suspect he was not pleased.
And he never really had a good relationship with him to begin with. Preet, let me thank you very much, Preet Bharara. Always important for you to be here. You have a final thought before I let you go?
Look, I'm worried about who the next Attorney General might be. Remember, this person is only in an acting capacity, and I think it's a precarious time, as you use that word, I think, appropriately. It's a fraught time, and it's a contentious time, and that person is very, very important. There's a lot of time left in the Trump administration, not just with respect to the Mueller probe, but all sorts of issues of law and order and fairness and justice going on in the country. And so I hope he chooses wisely, and I hope he chooses someone who can get consensus support. Yeah, it's a tenuous moment indeed. All right, guys, thanks very much. There's a lot going on. Let's take a quick break.